I've been supporting Donkey Kong's new look this entire time, but if you're going to turn him into some dad who's dabbing wrong on purpose to embarrass the kids, I think you've taken it too far. The Switch 2 is officially 2 weeks away, which means tonight we're kicking off with Switch 2 Launch Watch. Now, with the Switch 2 being 2 weeks away, that also means we are only 2 weeks away from the Switch 1 becoming absolutely obsolete. There will simply be no reason to have a Switch 1 anymore. Which is sad, yeah, but it's not like I haven't been here many times before. When you got a Game Boy Advance, you didn't need a Game Boy Color anymore. In fact, I remember back in the day when I got a Game Boy Advance, I painted my Game Boy Color because I never liked the color, the deep purple color of a Game Boy Color. So I painted it red with flames on it, and I used the wrong kind of paint. So it just it was crusty, right? And it still worked, but it was bad to feel. And so my cousin thought it looked cool actually, and I said, "Man, you can have it." And then when I texted him tonight, turns out he still has it. But really what I've been thinking about is how we're going to remember the Switch 1 in particular, right? Because so much of it is carrying on to the Switch 2. You might say well, the Switch 1 was really the birth of Nintendo really embracing indies. But I fully expect that to carry on, right? It's not like there's going to be a hard cutoff for that. So here are 7 things I think we will remember the Switch 1 for. Now, if at this moment you're thinking, hold on a minute, he said 7, but the title said 6. Did he cut one? Let me assure you, no, I didn't cut anything. I simply counted wrong. How about this? Smash Bros. Character reveal trailers. I know every time you click on one of my videos, there's a 50-50 chance I'm going to bring up Smash Bros. Reveal trailers. But it is because I'm crazy about them, yes. But I do feel like that era might be over. What happened during the Switch, most of its lifetime, right, was when you're watching Nintendo Direct, there's this danger and excitement that something huge might happen in Smash Bros. And I think you can feel its sense. That is missing. You can feel that lack of certain electricity. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to be sweating at their desktop wondering who's going to join the race with the Kirby Air Riders. Labo is kind of cool. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about, where it's you say to your friend, bro, do you remember Labo? Most of your friends won't remember Labo. You'll have to explain it was the thing where you had to buy a box full of cardboard sleeves and rubber bands, and you'd put them together to make your Switch do weird stuff. And what's weird is the vehicle one had its own video game in there that will now be accessible only to people who own a Switch 1 and a bunch of cardboard and rubber bands. Probably should have started with this one, Nintendo's second comeback. The Switch is a feel-good story. I was recently watching E3 2015 for Nintendo, and it's a rough show. It's tough to watch. What's funny is they promise the NX is going to be good, but not ready to show it yet.
In our new dedicated game platform, codename NX, which we'll tell you more about in 2016.
So in the meantime, here's some absolute baloney. And so with the Switch 1, with Nintendo getting their act together and putting out a successful product with some of the best video games they've ever made, they get to show up on Jimmy Fallon. It was great to see. It felt like they really cleaned up. And so the Switch 2 could be just as successful as the Switch 1, but it's not going to be, it's that same story. It's not going to feel as good to watch it happen. By the way, if you're wondering what the first comeback was, that's the Wii/DS. That was the real dumb money era. How about waiting a really long time to visit your friends' islands in Animal Crossing? Maybe this is naive, but I want to feel like that day is done. The day in which it's COVID lockdown, you just want to see what kind of fossils your friend has, and you got to go visit that dodo bird, and it takes a super long time to fly, and then there's just this cutscene of you landing. It's like a whole 8-minute rigmarole just to make an online connection. Those days are done. Animal Crossing Switch 2, it's just, trust me on this, it's going to be like, I'm here. Okay, I got a dark one. Stick drift. I wasn't even familiar with the phrase stick drift until this generation. You know, it's when one of your analog sticks is just kind of moving just a little bit on its own. You got this cursor that's just like, I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. Stop. You know, that kind of thing. And to be fair, straight out, I know that PlayStation controllers have stick drift too. Mine certainly did. For that Edge controller, Sony will just sell you replacement analog sticks. But I guess it just hurts so much more for the Switch because, one, those analog sticks, you know, they are the console. That's basically the thing's functionality, but also they were so dang expensive. And not that we're done with expensive Joy-Cons, no, but I gotta feel like this new era, this new generation of Switch 2 Joy-Con 2s, stick drift will be a thing of the past. And you know what? Also, Switch Pro controller, worst D-pad Nintendo has ever produced. I mean that. You can't play Tetris with this. Meanwhile, Wii U Pro controller, one of their best D-pads. What happened here? And last thing I think we might remember about the Switch 1 is the death of the mini consoles. So just to rewind for a second, I had forgotten this entirely. When the Switch 1 released, when it initially launched, it was free to play online games. You didn't have to pay anything to play Mario Kart 8 online because Nintendo wasn't ready yet. And again, I forgot all this. They even had to delay it. It was supposed to come out in 2017, the launch year of the Switch, but because it wasn't world class yet, Nintendo Switch Online got delayed to 2018. Meanwhile, back in 2016, before the Switch is even released, Nintendo puts out the NES Classic Edition. Look at all these games in one tiny box. And it was a big hit, and it was selling out. And then, the year after that, the SNES Classic Edition, which even included the unreleased Star Fox 2. How cool. Another smashing success. What could they possibly put out the year after that? N64 Mini? You think they'll do Game Boys? What are they gonna do? Turns out, nothing. Also, in 2018, the year after that, Nintendo Switch Online was finally ready, and it came with its own classic game collection. No more free multiplayer, that's over, but at least you're getting Solomon's Key. Now you might think connecting these two things might be stretching it a bit, but Reggie Fils-Aimé himself even basically confirmed it. He said, "We were clear when we did the first two classic series that for us, these were limited time opportunities that were a way for us as a business to bridge the conclusion of Wii U as a hardware system to the launch of the Nintendo Switch. That was the very strategic reason we launched the NES Classic system." So yeah, those sweet little mini consoles were just too good for this world. They simply existed to help Nintendo out in some down years. Not likely we'll ever see anything like that again, unless the Switch 2 is a catastrophic failure. And with Donkey Kong Bonanza, that's simply not possible. That's delayed input for this week. I'll be back next week. Until then, thanks for watching. So there's been some absolutely wild and fiery headlines in regards to Marathon over the last week. Bungie leadership needs to be gutted completely. Former Marathon dev says Bungie was extremely toxic and humiliating to work with days after art theft controversy. This one's pretty blunt. It's just over for Marathon. And then the thing I want to talk about most this week, haunted-looking art director live streams apology for Marathon theft scandal, but chat is merciless, would write an original comment, but I don't see any good ones to plagiarize. Sick. Now, I didn't know you could just write headlines like that. This is what happened. Last week, Anti-Real, an artist, said Bungie copied this stuff from me. Bungie did later that night apologize on social media, but they already had this live stream scheduled the day after. And credit to them, they went through with it. Now, I do think this team does seem new to live streaming, or perhaps even to the concept of being live.
It'd be awkward if you got some spelling errors in there.
Yeah.
And that's what it still looks like right now on their YouTube channel. They posted it like that. To whoever runs this channel, you can clip that stuff out. Let me show you. Watch this. It's not even that many clicks. Hold on. Okay, and boop. No more awkward intro.
Let us know when the actual stream camera is up.
Anyway, what is wild and twisted is that the entire hour-plus long stream is just that one shot. Director Joe Ziegler on the left, art director Joe Cross on the right. And yeah, it's as awkward as you're imagining it is. The first order of business is for this art director to issue his written apology. And then after that, he had to stay there, mostly silent for most of the rest of the show, just looking somehow tense and checked out at the same time. And you know this about me, I love an apology. However, there was something a little stinky about this apology. Because yeah, he covered all the points from that post before. The person who did this is no longer with us. We've contacted Anti-Real and things are good with her. And we can't show you more footage right now because we're currently making sure nothing else is stolen in our game. But I have to wonder what your intent is. Why you would include this part.
Hundreds of artists have worked on this project for years, internally and externally, and we share many influences, including modernism, Swiss typography, 2000s style vector art, cyberpunk, and of course the original Marathon trilogy. Our style is a result of all of those inspirations.
And then say,
and so to that extent, I want to send my personal apology to Anti-Real. Her work is fantastic, and we clearly share mutual appreciation for a specific genre of graphic design, and it's very exciting, and I'm excited to have folded that into our style in general. So thanks for listening, and thanks for your patience.
So he's saying they share an appreciation for the same graphical style. He's saying he's excited to bring Anti-Real into the fold. Yeah, I bet you are. And again, if you think maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, maybe I'm interpreting that the wrong way. A half an hour in, he did just bring up Anti-Real again for no reason.
There's even some DNA shared, I think, with Destiny, with sort of Swiss modernism and that whole, that whole genre of, sans serif typography, all the way up through 2000s, early 90s, which is where I mentioned before. I think there is a lot of overlap there in terms of inspiration. With Anti-Real, the designers are Public, vector art, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so Anti-Real was clearly inspired by a lot of the same things we were. Not that we were inspired by Anti-Real. It's kind of, we're just all vibing off each other. And I guess what really bugs me still is the half acknowledgement. The idea that, like, hey, there was just some images posted to decal sheets from somebody who's no longer with us at Bungie. And I guess because those textures were one-to-one rips, it was the most damning thing to run with. But it's still this image here to me. This cool little shapes turned into larger grids, into larger textures. That stuff is all over Marathon. Look, we got one of those little squares right here. Did that person who no longer works at Bungie just work on everything? Now, here's how I would recommend you just handle this. Here's my advice. Simply say, this was a major F-up. We did bad. We did a bad thing. Anti-Real, we love your work. We are paying you $1 million. All right, everybody? We cool? In fact, if when you boot up Marathon, you find any art we stole from you, we'll pay you $1 million. Think of it like a contest.